Now, exchange rate volatility in Nigeria refers to the fluctuation in the value of the Nigerian naira relative to foreign currencies such as the US dollar, euro, and pound sterling. This volatility is influenced by various factors, including global economic conditions, domestic prices, political instability, and commodity prices. Now, Nigeria has experienced significant exchange rate volatility over the years, with periods of rapid depreciation and appreciation of the naira. Fluctuations in the exchange rate. Now, fluctuations in the exchange rate can impact various sectors of the economy, including trade, investment, inflation, and fiscal policy. My guest on the program is Thomas Emmanuel, who is an investment expert. Many thanks for joining us. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll delve deep into exchange rate volatility in Nigeria. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. Now, the Central Bank of Nigeria plays a key role in managing exchange rate volatility through interventions in the foreign exchange market, setting of exchange rate policies, and foreign exchange reserves management. However, the effectiveness of these measures can be limited by external factors beyond the control of the central bank, like we see now, for instance, insecurity and the likes. Now, if you've just joined us, this is Business Point on Global Television. We are live in the nation's capital, Abuja, and we're on Star Times, channel 276. My guest on the program, like I said earlier, is Emmanuel Thomas, who is an investment expert. Many thanks for joining us, Emmanuel Thomas. Do we have Emmanuel Thomas?
Hi, Queen. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me on your show today.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Now, like we see, the exchange rates, we see inflation, we see how much it's biting deep into Nigeria's economy. We see that if you go virtually into the street, you see how people are complaining. There's food crisis. People can't afford basic, 3-course meals, and all of that. Can we take a look at the factors that are actually contributing to this exchange rate volatility?
Okay. First of all, I would like to say Nigerians have an inflated sense of what the naira is actually worth. For the longest time, the CBN has used different interventions to see how we can keep the exchange rates at as stable as possible by subsidizing it. And in other major economies of the world, exchange rate is being influenced purely by market forces, demand and supply. And that has not been the case in Nigeria. So the value of the Naira basically in the last few years has been fixed or manipulated and has been subsidized. So only now can we see the real value of what the Naira is worth. And like you said, there are a lot of factors that affect the value of a currency. I mean, currencies these days are backed by nothing. Before now, decades ago, currencies used to be backed at least by some physical substance that a country can show that the currency is worth. For example, the US used the gold standard, which was the standard across board. And then in 1971, Richard Nixon took the US off the gold standard, and it didn't take long before almost currencies are not backed by anything. They are just exactly what it is, fiat currencies. And when a currency is not backed by anything, the only thing that can influence the strength of a currency is, in my opinion, one word: confidence. Confidence. And if you even look at the term fiat currency, it's from a Latin word that says, let it be so. Meaning currencies have the value of nothing other than the faith in the currency. The faith of let it be so. The faith in the currency by the people, by foreign investors, and by faith now I'm talking about what I just said, confidence. And Nigeria over time has proven to be a nation that has been unable to gain the confidence of its citizens, the confidence of foreign investors, and the world at large. And for a currency to be strong, there has to be a strong demand for it. And without confidence, nobody intends to keep the Naira. And you might ask me what exactly could be the cause of this lack of confidence in the Naira. And you mentioned something earlier: insecurity. So you see a country that is drained by insecurity, you can already expect that there is not enough confidence to invest in that currency. There's not enough confidence to ascertain if the currency is a viable option in terms of investing. So right now, the only thing we have as a nation is our reputation, and to see how we can increase the confidence in our economy by the confidence of our economy, by our citizens, and then even for foreign investors as well. And that is something we have failed to do thus far. And that is why we are seeing the consequences only now. Now, these consequences are things that would have appeared earlier, but being that the CBN has used different ways to subsidize the value or the currency cost and subsidizing the value of the Naira and keeping it stable, we've been unable to see these consequences of inflation before now, and only now are we really seeing the real value of our economy as a nation.
Thank you. Now we see that as a possible means to, salvage the high inflation rate and all that, we see that the IMF has given an advice as regards, first they say our reserves will drop to about 29 billion Naira, and now they're asking CBN to raise about 2 trillion through OMO bills. Now that's obviously to mop up cash and maybe deal with inflation. Does this strategy sound like what we can adopt, what can work?
Sorry, please, could you come again?
Okay, so the IMF has advised that from our reserves, that it will drop from 29 to about 29 billion naira. This is obviously to, mop up cash and maybe deal with inflation, just to deal with inflation, like our food reserves. Do you think that this strategy is something that we can adopt, something that can help inflation in the country?
Okay, mopping up our reserve is definitely a good idea. What would not help is pumping cash into the economy mindlessly. As we all know, the more cash that is printed out and then put into the economy, you are encouraging the exact problem you are trying to fight, which is inflation in itself. I don't really have a strong opinion on that, and I'll definitely look into it and see what I can come up with.
Many thanks. Now let's look at how the government can salvage this situation. Recently, we see that an ultimatum is given. Now, obviously, different bodies, the NLC giving an ultimatum as regards inflation, and that if nothing is done about bringing down the cost of food prices and all that up until 23rd of this month, people are going to protest. Before this came up, we see that a case was filed by the Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, as opposed to the federal government, to bring down the price of food items under 7 days. Nothing was done about it. What do you think? And we see also that the president and service chiefs, as well as other governors, had a meeting. This is not the first of its kind, although what makes it different is that the president was in attendance this time. And then this meeting, obviously, was to talk about topical issues as regards inflation, food crisis, and insecurity. We see that they had that closed-door meeting sometime last week or 2 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. Do you see any changes after all of this, the ultimatum by Femi Falana, the meetings and all that? And then what are the foreseeable outcomes of, most of these things that have been happening? Do you see a change? Do you see the prices of food items coming down? Do you see things getting better for Nigeria?
Okay, for the foreseeable future, in my opinion, maybe not. Like I said, Nigerians have a false sense of how strong our economy is, a false sense for how big our reserves are. And, it's us Nigerians. We are very, very proud people. We have oil. As a nation, we have based our entire wealth on it, which definitely drying up. Food prices, currency prices, since the Naira was floated by the CBN, what the CBN has essentially done is allowing the Naira, the value of the Naira to be solely determined by market forces such as supply and demand. And those are the same forces that apply to food prices as well. Supply and demand. And as a nation, whatever is going to come out from these closed door meetings, in my opinion, would only be a treatment of the symptom and not exactly a cure for the disease at all. Because we could have regulatory bodies put a cap on what people could charge on food prices. But as a nation that is entirely dependent on imports, even the materials to get our processed foods to finished products are imported most of the time. How exactly are you going to cover for the cost for importation? Would you come again with another subsidy to subsidize the cost of importation from, say, other countries to bring food into Nigeria? And I think this is the time where we need to do. It is hard, but I think it calls for exactly what China did when they faced a similar situation. What China did then was to lock up the entire country and decided to survive entirely on its own resources. It is extremely painful. It is even painful as it is now, but it is even going to be more painful. So we need to stop relying on imports. We need to stop relying on imports. And we can see that importation has been one of the key drivers because of the declining value of the naira. We need to stop relying on imports. We need to look into what the resources we have and how we can make food for ourselves and make our nation a self-sustaining nation. So in my opinion, these protests, these autonoms will lead to policies that are only going to treat the symptoms. Perhaps the government comes with a temporary solution to give us a false sense of calm, a false sense of progress, when in reality there's a deeper root to the causes of our problems that we need to solve. And I mean, all the past few years, the past government, the government before it, we've also had this false sense of progress and stability. For example, our fuel price is subsidized. Our fuel price is subsidized. The value of the naira was fixed by the CBN. So these are all false signals of stability. Fine, the government could do something to calm the situation down, at least to gain the confidence of the people. Remember what I said. What the federal government needs to do is to gain the confidence of Nigerians. And I think the best way to actually do that is pure transparency. Because in my opinion, the average Nigerian does not know how poor we are as a nation. The average Nigerian doesn't know how poor we are as a nation. We think we have oil reserves that can serve all of us as a nation. If you even ask some Nigerians, they think Nigeria should be as wealthy as Dubai and have the kind of infrastructure the UAE has, not realizing that they have 10 to 20 times oil reserves that we have, with less than 10% of our current population, and have excess to feed the needs of its people. And Nigeria as a country does not have excess. Nigeria as a country does not have excess. But the problem is Nigerians do not have confidence in these initiatives by the government. Even if the government came up with a new policy by next week, to improve the situation, Nigerians as a whole do not have confidence in the government. And I think gaining that confidence should also be a key part of the plan, alongside putting together these policies that are going to ease the situation.
Thomas, don't you think that our problem is rather not resources but management, as we see that we're rich as regards oil and other agricultural produce? Don't you think, now just a question, that the problem of Nigeria has to do with management?
Okay, you have a point there. The problem with Nigeria, one of the problems with Nigeria is definitely lack of management and lack of accountability. And that has definitely been one of the reasons why this loss of confidence has occurred. But then we are looking at the current situation. So the economy has been mismanaged by previous governments. So we are looking at the current situation right now. And yes, definitely we have to make better use of our resources. I mean, there are areas where we spend on, where we do not necessarily need to spend on. We spend like a rich country on things we don't need to spend on. But at the same time, there is not enough to go around. There's not enough to go around, especially being that 90% of our revenue is from oil. And that is why the government has looked into creating internal revenue from taxes. from taxes and from taxing businesses in Nigeria here. And then when it comes to agriculture, I mean, you mentioned agriculture. So who are now the key drivers in the agricultural sector? I mean, we don't see a lot of players there. We don't see a lot of players there, and it's easy to pass blames. I mean, we are in a capitalist society, and then a capitalist society is one that rewards innovation, but we don't see a lot of Nigerians playing in the spaces that we complain about, and then perhaps somebody does it. I'm not going to mention him. Somebody does it and then claims up a monopoly on that sector and makes it difficult for more people to come in, and then we then again look at the government instead of looking inwards to ourselves. So I mean, right now Nigeria is depending on us as citizens as much as we are depending on the government to come up with something. One thing the government could do is to create an environment where businesses can thrive, which is not the case right now, where businesses can thrive, businesses in the agricultural space. I mean, I think there are a lot of incentives too for people to set up businesses in the commodity space to see how we can have internally produced products that we can manage as a country to survive on. So yes, you do have a point that we need to manage resources. We do have a problem of management, but that is not exactly what we are looking at right now. What we are looking at, definitely we could cut spending on some of the things that we've previously spent on and then spend on more, but we need to realize that as a nation we are poor, and I think that is something Nigerians are failing to understand, that as a nation we are poor, we are not as rich as we think we are, and we have this false sense of our wealth. And it is in realizing that we can reduce our expectations and then move towards, meeting the economy exactly where it is and managing it as it comes.
Okay, now just a little away from exchange rate volatility. Now let's look at, you mentioned that 90% of Nigeria's revenue comes from oil. Quite frankly, that is true. But we must begin to now look a way just to diversify the economy such a way that we have other sectors like agriculture, welfare, the service business, basically the welfare and service business, tourism. What can we do? Because we have a lot of places, take for instance, places in the North, Springs, that we can now begin to maybe create recreational centers and all that. Now, this is just me talking about diversification. How can the government look into these areas to ensure that, there's an even spread of the nation's wealth?
Okay. There is more than one way to look at diversification as an economy that we are. What drives a capitalist nation is exactly what it is: investments by capitalists, not necessarily investments by the government. And what the government can do in its part is to create policies that allow these industries to thrive, create incentives, create tax incentives for business owners to be more willing to create that investor confidence to invest in these areas. I mean, agriculture is a very big one. A lot of our commodities are in high demand. A lot of our commodities are in high demand abroad. You have sesame seed, our palm oil, which is used to create soaps, create cosmetics, and all of that. We have hibiscus flower, charcoal. So we definitely do have a lot of products that are in high demand outside Nigeria, and what is lacking is investment in those spaces. But the investment in those spaces would only come when there is enough confidence in investing in those sectors. And with the current state of the nation, insecurity, it's almost you need investors to invest to improve the GDP of the nation, and the nation can only improve if investors invest, but investors are not willing to invest unless there's enough confidence in the prosperity of the nation. Nigeria, the only resource we have here in Nigeria is a market. I mean, we have close to 300 million people, and that is a market for just about anything. That is the only resource that we have. Security-wise, we are down. And imagine somebody trying to invest in tourism in the north, and then you not only have to worry about the infrastructure that will lead to your tourist center, such as, say, the roads, electricity, water supply. You now also have to worry about security. You now also have to worry about security. Or say somebody who wants to invest in commodities, exporting commodities out of Nigeria. So you've started a farm, you are planting, and then you have to take your things to the Lagos port to send them abroad. Now you no longer, you not only have to worry about your crops being stolen while you are in planting season, but you also have to worry about the transportation from wherever you are. Say if you are in the south, and sending it down to Lagos, you have to worry about that as well. You have to worry about the fact that diesel is around 1,400 naira per liter, so your transportation costs go up exponentially. So what the government can do is to create a thriving environment, and the investments are going to come naturally. I mean, there are a lot of opportunities that I've sort of looked at myself, but then just looking at the environment that supports these opportunities, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist, and that is where I would say the government has failed in terms of managing our funds as a nation, because the job of a government is to create a thriving environment, and every other thing would follow naturally. A thriving environment is one with security. A thriving environment is one with good transportation for the movement of goods and services. A thriving environment is one with electricity, one with good water and all of that. But you find business people in Nigeria providing these things for themselves. And our dependence on oil has grown too much. And I'm happy the government has started looking into generating internal revenue by looking at taxing businesses. I'm expecting to see how that works out.
All right, thank you. Now, as regards taxing and generating internal revenue, it was reported that a bill is proposed to tax social media content creators. We know that this has been on for themselves, for them, social media content creators, and has been generating, has been lucrative, basically. Now, what are your takes as regards, because now for some people, this is something that they started for themselves because of lack of job opportunities for most youth who graduate and are in the labor market, and now they started this up for themselves. Quite frankly, it's generating a lot of money for these young people, and now the government is asking for tax. What do you make of this? Do you think that's a welcome development?
In my opinion, yes. I think so. I mean, throughout this interview, it might sound like I am pro-federal government, but I assure you that I have no affiliations with the federal government, nor do I have political support for anybody. But then taxing social media content creators is definitely a way to go. I mean, why do we pay taxes? You are using the services that a nation has provided to generate income for yourself, and you are paying a quota of that to provide the government with funding to provide more of those services. And when you talk about lack of jobs, Once again, the government does not create jobs. The government creates, especially in a capitalist society, say for example the United Nations. So the government creates a thriving environment for businesses, and then those businesses create jobs. So that is to address the part where you talked about job creation. But I think everybody needs to pay their quota. I mean, if later we can have the conversation of the government managing what they've raised from people, but definitely everybody needs to pay their quota. And like I've said again, where this government has lost it is that lack of confidence, because it is no lie that the government, the current leadership of the nation was not the preferred choice of many people. There are other preferred choices that many people have. I'm particularly indifferent about it, but I think these policies could have been put in place by a leadership that is the choice of people, of the majority of people, and then they will take it with good heart. They will take it with faith. They will take it with trust that it is going to work. So the policy in itself is not a bad one. The problem comes from the inability to trust that the policy is going to yield any good fruit. So when we ask people to pay taxes now, the next question is, what have you been doing with the taxes that I've paid before? And what are you going to do with this one? And that trust, the lack of trust, it's insane. So I honestly feel like there is nothing much another presidential candidate could have done differently from the current one that we have that would have made a ton of difference. The only difference would have been the trust and the confidence from the people. The confidence where presidency says, do this, or I think this is how we need to proceed. And everybody's like, okay, I trust you. I don't exactly understand the economics behind it, but I trust you and I'm going to do it. So Nigerians need to have a little bit of faith. They have to have a little bit of faith. The government to taxing is definitely a way to go. Taxing social media creators is definitely a viable option. I think everybody should pay their quota, and social media content creators should pay their quota as long as they are generating revenue in a Nigerian environment. However bad it is still in a Nigerian environment. They are not creating this revenue by being in another country. So they are generating this revenue from Nigeria, and I think they should pay their quota.
Thank you. You know, many will argue that the Nigerian environment has not given a lot of people the opportunity and resources to thrive as regards to business and other related activities. But regardless, I see that it is necessary for everyone to pay their quota. Now, just very briefly, can you tell us how, now we're moving to the exchange rate volatility, how what strategies businesses can employ, you know, to mitigate the effects of this exchange rate? I know it's biting hard. The prices of goods and services are increasing virtually minute by minute. But what can be done by not just the government now, but by business owners? Is there any way they can, you know, salvage this situation to continue in business?
If you find somebody with an answer to that question, I would like to consult with them as well, because it is bad. It is bad. I kid you not. This is a strange situation to be in. Cost of doing business has increased exponentially. I can't even, it's hard to wrap my head around. In the last 1 year, for example, I run a hospitality business. In the last 1 year, the prices of getting hospitality or accommodation has only grown probably around 20% or 15% at most. But then the price of diesel has risen about 4 or 5 times its original price, say 1 year, 2 years ago. So how do you translate that cost now to the customer? How do you translate that cost? How do you explain to the customer that this is why you are paying extra? And you can't exactly do that. This is a very bad situation. I think a lot of businesses are going to suffer. A lot of businesses that didn't plan before now, businesses that did not have foreign reserves, I believe they're going to suffer. Diversification is an option, but diversification when the injury, when it's happening, when it's hot, is not the answer. Again, diversification is a preventive measure, not a treatment for the current situation. So, as much as I hate sounding pessimistic, I really think disaster does await a lot of businesses, and it's not a funny issue. Businesses are finding it hard to find their markets here in Nigeria. Businesses, even restaurants can't price their food right. Um, Logistics companies, they can't, because costs have risen up and then wages have not risen up. The only businesses that are sort of thriving are the ones that are servicing foreign clients. I mean, we have a lot of people now doing remote jobs, doing freelance services for foreign clients, servicing, for example, in the hospitality business now, the people who can afford you might be people coming into Nigeria. So now we are looking outward. Now I can speak for my industry. The solution for my industry is to look outward for your customers, because your customers do not exist in Nigeria anymore. They can't afford anything at all anymore. And if one day we run out of foreign customers, then we know it's the end for real.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure having you. And we do hope, to have you again on the program. I hope you'd grace this platform again.
Yes, definitely. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, thank you. If you've just joined us, we've been speaking with Thomas Emmanuel, who's a development expert, and he's spoken extensively about the exchange rate volatility. We'll take a quick break, and when we return, we'll just take a look at what's happening in the world of business. Please stay with us. Many thanks for staying with us. Now let's look at the business desk. The recent sharp depreciation of the naira in the foreign exchange market, as well as the rising inflation rate, has started eroding the value of assets under insurance cover. The recent developments in the industry have indicated that most risks are now underinsured, as value of claims are getting lower than the assets they were supposed to cover. Also, insurance firms are now offloading their underwriting businesses to certain arrangements with both local and foreign reinsurers, while also incurring higher reinsurance expenses, especially on overseas setting due to weaker naira. Currently, findings from the full-year report of 17 leading insurance companies released on the Nigerian Exchange Limited show that while gross premium written GPW for full year 2023 increased by 25.9% to 557.5 naira, 5 billion naira, I beg your pardon, for 442.6 billion naira recorded in 2022, the reinsurance expenses went up by 28.4% to 133.1 billion naira from 103.6 billion naira. Now, Nigeria's local currency is currently exchanging above 2,000 naira against the Great Britain pound at the parallel market. The Bureau of Change operator here at Wuse Zone 4, Malam Ibrahim, confirmed the rates on Monday. He says, yes, it's true that they are currently selling above 2,000 naira for the pounds, and it's still about the heavy and consistent demand for these currencies. Our correspondent learned that the new rate increased from 1,930 naira recorded on Saturday and is currently the lowest point in the historical performance of the naira. Now, the central parity rate of the Chinese currency yuan strengthened 4 pips to 7.1032 against the dollar, according to the China Foreign Exchange Trade System. In China's spot foreign exchange markets, the yuan is allowed to rise or fall by 2% from the central parity rate each trading day. The central parity rate of the yuan against the dollar is based on the weighted average of prices offered by market makers before the opening of the interbank market each business day. Now, the Nigerian Data Protection Commission has issued a guidance notice to data controllers and processors of major importance in order to clarify the categories of organizations that are required to register with the Commission in line with the Nigerian Data Protection Act. Relying on some sections of the NDPA, organizations that are of particular value or significance to the economy, society, or security of Nigeria are designated by the Commission as data controllers and processors of major importance. According to the guidance notice signed by the Commission's Head of Legal Enforcement and Regulations, Babatunde Bamigboye, the data controller or data processor shall be deemed to have particular value or significance to the economy, society, or security of Nigeria, and hence designated to be of major importance if it keeps or has access to a filing system. Now let's take a look at some business reports from Kike Lomo Okiri.
Hello and welcome to Business Report on Prime News. Nigeria's local currency is currently exchanging above 2,000 naira against the Great Britain pound at the parallel market. The naira depreciated against the dollar in the parallel forex market, where forex is unofficially trading at 1,673 naira from 1,670 naira to a dollar on Friday. This development persists despite the Central Bank of Nigeria implementation of several policies aimed at bolstering the supply of foreign exchange. One of the recent policies was the CBN's announcement of halting international oil companies operating in Nigeria from immediately remitting 100% of their forex proceeding to their parent companies abroad. Dollar sales by Deposit Money Bank and other entities at the Nigerian Autonomous Foreign Exchange Markets dropped by $252 million to $84.1 million. This represents a 74% drop from the $331.1 million transaction recorded at the official Nigerian Autonomous Foreign Exchange Market. The naira depreciated to 1,537 naira to a dollar from 1,498 naira to a dollar recorded at the close of trading activities at the official market. Analysis of data obtained from FMDQ Security Exchange show that forex turnover plunged by 74% to $84.10 million from $336.11 million. However, aside from commercial banks, the Central Bank of Nigeria, oil firm and multinationals also sell dollar at NAFEM. The Nigerian Customs Service says it has intercepted 15 trailers that were fully loaded with food items and were heading out of the country through Sokoto State border. The trailer were stopped and the food items were returned to Nigeria. This is part of the measures to stabilize the prices of food items across the country in line with the mandate of the federal government. The federal government had set up a committee comprising the National Security Advisor, the Director General of Department of State Service, and the Inspector General of Police to clamp down on traders hoarding grains. The government had ruled out the importation of food as part of strategies to address the high cost of foodstuff and the economic hardship troubling the country. The National Pension Commission says it has made significant strides in ensuring compliance among employers regarding pension contribution. Between the year 2012 and 2023, PENCON says it has recovered a total of 25.4 billion naira in unremitted pension contributions from defaulting employers. This substantial amount encompasses the principal contribution of 12.93 billion naira and penalty totaling 12.52 billion naira in about 11 years. This disclosure was made by Ibrahim Boa, the Director of Corporate Communication at PENCOM, during the Finance Correspondent Association of Nigeria annual general meeting in Abuja. Boa highlighted the importance of the Pension Reform Act, noting that the legislation mandates penalty for late remittance accruing interest at a rate of 2% per month. He emphasized the nearly equal distribution between recovered principal contribution and penalty, underscoring the comprehensive effort to enforce compliance. Kike Lomo Ukeri, Global Television News.
And that's it on Business Point. Don't forget we're live in the nation's capital, Abuja, and we're on Star Times, channel 276. Kindly follow us on all social media platforms using @Global TV NG and other handles now showing on your screen. Thank you for watching. I am Queen Agaba. See you again.